Welcome everyone to Kinship Earth Connections. My name is Lauren Archer. I'm the Executive Director of Kinship Earth. And on behalf of our board members and our contributors, our donors, and our extended community of kindred spirits, we are thrilled to have you with us today. The purpose of our Kinship Earth Connections event series is networking and also highlighting. We know that everyone is very, very busy, and yet it's important that we stay up to date on what our peers are doing in the field so that we can continue to weave our networks of connection. So these events, we try to host them at least once a month, provide an opportunity for us to get a high-level overview on influencers in our network that are making a contribution to the regeneration of our planet. So today, we're delighted to welcome the team from Planetary CARE. They're going to do their own introductions, but we're going to begin with Dr. Melanie Carlone, who's going to guide us in a little bit of a grounding.
What an honor, my goodness. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you are. It is a joy to be here with all of you today. All these beautiful faces. So this is always such a lovely way for me to start any kind of virtual connection. And I know it is for many of us. So here we are in our own space. I invite you just to take a breath of the air in your space, which we know connects through all of us. Closing your eyes or casting them down, just feeling your seat. Feeling the edges of this beautiful body given as a gift. In this day, also a gift. And feeling the loving embrace of this planet we call home, holding us, grounding us to her. Breathing in, perhaps breathing in as if you had roots into the very center of this earth. Breathing up the gift, and with gratitude, this holding, this embrace. And on an out breath, perhaps the next one or the one after that, just feeling as if the whole crown of your head were to open wide to these beautiful energies that surround us, that go through us, that support us, as if the recognition of yourself as a conduit between heaven and earth. From the heart centering and circling around was enough. What if we all just knew deep in our hearts that just showing up is enough, and everything else we do is a beautiful byproduct of the energies that we are. And so breathing in again through your feet up into your heart, breathing out through the crown of the head, let us just with the point of our consciousness fuel this field between us, this unknown, inexplicable space that we hold. We can call the quantum, we can call creator, we can have a million names, but let's just point ourselves towards it right now and hold the intention that today and this day, right now in this body, and however we come together in this space between us, that much good results. That we continue to weave this web we call home with the interconnections and stronger resonance. Knowing that ultimately we create the good for all, no exceptions. That we're coming from the old and towards the new, each step along the way, walking each other home. And breathing in again through the center of the heart, breathing out through the feet, through the crown, and into the field between us, just lightly letting our eyes open, our breath be felt, a smile on our face as we come together in this beautiful room. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Melanie. You always bring so much positive energy. Really appreciate it. So thank you so much for sharing this time together. We have about 50 minutes where we're going to tell you the Planetary CARE story, and then we have about 30 minutes of dialogue with you, and we'd be grateful if you would share your wisdom with us. We encourage you, like Lauren said, to share your thoughts and questions in the chat. Our colleague Cameron is supporting us on the tech side. Thank you for that, Cameron. We're also going to pause 3 times, maybe even 4 times throughout our presentation, just to invite in a burning question if there is one. So our story is framed around our audacious purpose. We are a bridge organization. We are a co-creator and a network of networks, and dedicated to learning and supporting what's needed to help shift agriculture towards a regenerative future. So we are launching 3 new enterprises that are needed to shift the current entrenched agricultural system and mindset. We will weave in the description of these 3 enterprises into our personal stories. And we are going to offer a powerful glimpse into what making these old systems obsolete may look like. So we at Planetary CARE stand for living soil. Today's food system has created a crisis in our local and planetary environment and in individual and community health across the globe. We are devoting our energies to a future of resilience through regeneration and thriving, healthy bioregional food systems. I'm so excited for you to meet part of our team and for you to hear each of our stories. We will share why we're so passionate about this work and how we will build healthy, thriving communities based on soil-first solutions. We're also going to share how you might get involved if these initiatives call to you as they call us, and we sense you will. So my name is Marianne Wyne. I've been with Planetary CARE for over 2 years as a Chief Operating Officer, having pivoted from a successful corporate career. I spent 25 years optimizing systems and stimulating change to help corporations be more profitable. I work with global enterprises, including Microsoft, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, NTT Data, the Hain Celestial Group, and many others. I was an expert in lean manufacturing, Six Sigma methods, systems reengineering, organizational change management, and many more. I also taught these methods at the University of British Columbia in Canada for 10 years. I was considered an expert in that space. I realized 3 years ago, I could not spend another minute supporting that system. I went searching for meaning, literally. I spent 6 months exploring, and I found the heart I was looking for. I met Christine McDougall in Australia and signed up for her masterclass on syntropic enterprises. That's where I met Forrist. So why am I so passionate about my work at Planetary CARE? Well, I was amazed when I discovered that Planetary CARE is shifting global agriculture from the extractive and exploitative chemical industrial farming system to a whole systems approach to regenerate farming, regenerate healthy soil, healthy communities, and ultimately the planetary health. And I see this within our reach. I was also supercharged when I discovered what a novel enterprise Planetary CARE is. She's designed as a dynamic network, inviting relations with those on the ground doing the hard work, with those with skills and innovation that would support them. So we bridge them through belonging, agency, and flow to build a new kind of enterprise that's going to make obsolete today's predominantly exploitative organizations. And Susan Davis Mora, and I'm so honored you're on this call. You've been doing this for years, and you were the inspiration for the foundational structure of Planetary CARE. Much more on that later. So I'm now committed to using my skills and my experience to create healthy relationships for myself, my community, and this gorgeous planet crying out for attention. There's also another reason why I joined Planetary CARE, and it's a deeply personal one. So I grew up on farms. I was my dad's trusted farmhand. If you've seen the movie Out of Africa with Meryl Streep and Robert Redford, that's the first farm I grew up on. Karen Blixen had a coffee farm in Kenya in the 1920s and 30s. So I was really raised by the Kikuyu clan that lived around that farm. In the 1960s in Kenya, my dad and many farmers like him worked for the Danish Ministry of Foreign Aid. They supported the global green revolution, exporting industrial chemical agriculture methods to what was then indigenous smallholder farms who fed their communities. My dad and his friends thought they were helping solve issues of poverty and food scarcity. And these methods, obviously, we know now, proved to damage the natural environment, break down health, and our connection to nature. Little did I know that my father would tragically be affected by the Green Revolution mindset. In 1974, on our farm in Denmark, we dutifully adopted the chemical industrial farming methods that my dad was taught at agriculture college in Denmark in the 1960s. My dad passed away from cancer due to the exposure to chemical farm chemicals. Most of our family friends who farmed in Kenya and in Denmark had significant chronic illness, mostly cancer, that can be linked to their lifelong chemical exposure. So all these years, I have been compelled to ask, if my dad and so many of our friends were impacted so badly by industrial farming chemicals, what's happening to me, my family, my community, and the planet now? What's going on? What are the root problems that need to be addressed? Our chemical-dependent food and farming system has failed us in so many ways. According to the United Nations, nearly a quarter of the globe's land is degrading. The world's topsoil could be gone within 60 years. How do we restore this eroding foundation? This is a darned complex problem to solve. So now I'd like to introduce you to my dear colleague, Dr. Melanie Carlone, who has deep insight into the tragic effects on humans of soil degradation. Melanie?
Thank you. It's so good just to be vulnerable and honest about these things. So the thing that often just brings such joy to my heart, and because the common thread of our stories beginning in Africa. And it's a wonder to me. When I first met Marianne, I thought, wow, some magic is afoot here. My story began early in the 1980s in Zaire, now called Democratic Republic of the Congo, where I was a Peace Corps volunteer, encouraging local farmers to become involved in tilapia fish farming because there was so much protein deficiency, because the rate of wildlife extinction was just expanding, as we know is such a problem everywhere now. And so sudden and pretty dramatic perspective changes were kind of the norm for this 20-year-old going into Africa, where every day was this astounding new vision of the world. I mean, I was coming from this middle class culture where individualism and achievement was lauded. I'd just come out of university, and now I landed in a tribal culture that was really present to me on every level. And I mean every level. Like there was someone around my house at all times, my mud hut, wanting to know about me, interested in me. What was I doing? What did I eat? Sharing time together, sharing Earth's resources together. Farmers, we would go out to fields and gather together. We were growing fish and sharing our harvest. There were celebrations around marriages and births, and a lot around deaths and grieving. It was really an immersion in a cultural way of life that I had never experienced before. And one of the striking things is that I never met a stranger. I would motorcycle. I had a Honda 125 in Central Africa in these bad dirt roads. And I would sometimes go up to 100 kilometers away from my home, and I never met a stranger. They would hear me coming, and then people would come out, the whole village coming out, calling my name, Melanie, Melanie. I felt like a rock star. It was incredible. And sometimes that meant 4 or 5 dinners on the way home, because they knew I would be coming back on that same road. And people welcomed me with such open hearts. They had nothing many times, so they gave me half of what they had. So commonly held values of open door, welcome, and generosity prevailed and became sort of ingrained in me over the 2.5 years that I lived there. But very sadly, I was also at the time able to witness directly what a shift to globalized monoculture agriculture business was looking like, coming from generationally small farms that were held within families for many, many years, plots that used controlled burning. They rotated their crops. There was an abundant diversity on all the small plots that I witnessed. and sharing bounty. And then there was a local EU program, which was well-meaning, but again, so misguided. And they encouraged tribal chiefs to reassign their small fields and make them into large modern fields and become dedicated to monocropping corn and soy and peanuts, much of it for export, to build wealth and well-being into the village, but it was having the opposite effect. So that steady implantation of an extractive and exploited chemical industrial farming system had begun its march already there, taking a great toll on the land worldwide and on its creatures. And so we came this from to framing is something I particularly love that we do often in our work at Planetary CARE, helping us to presence the cultural and the system shifts that we're seeing. So we use this languaging with each other. So in this particular instance, we came from a tribal way of life that knew no refrigeration, there was no food storage, from nature abundantly providing all the food you needed within a day's walk of our home, where those who were less fortunate received aid. There was a communal form of salongo or service that we did once a week. And we would help people who were too sick or just had babies with their yard or harvesting from the field. So we came from this ancient rhythm and way of life in all of its glory and all of its challenge, because there was plenty of that as well. But we came from that to this sense of cultural dissolution, the effect of siloed, misguided, large force economics that would strip entire ecosystems and communities of their direct relationship to nature and each other and begin to move them lockstep into a different drummer. And this separation from nature actually came back to haunt me over and again, and very much in a different form 20 years later. I returned home from the Peace Corps and I was offered a US Navy career in rehabilitation medicine as a physical therapist, which shocked a lot of people, including me. And over the 25 years in that field, I was in the Navy 7 years and went on into corporate medicine. I saw this stunning, inexplicable rise in unexplained inflammation. Previously, maybe 1 in 75 to 100 people would have unexplained inflammation that we would chalk up to allergies. Oh, you just had allergies. To today, pretty much every person I see, I still run a small clinic. Every person I see in my clinic, directly or indirectly, has experienced the effects of a chronic inflammatory disease burden. Cancer, autoimmune disease, heart disease, diabetes, they're touching either them or people in their world. Chronic disease was once virtually unknown in the US in the early 1900s. In Africa, even as late as the 1980s, chronic disease was very, very rare. But it has exploded, and there's a lot of confusion as to the root cause of that chronic disease. Today, the CDC tells us 6 in 10 US adults live with a chronic disease. 6 in 10. And shockingly, 40% of children have one or more chronic disease. I mean, in the early 1900s, that was unheard of. The hot diseases like diphtheria, typhoid, those would take lives, but not diabetes, obesity. In Central Africa now, pathology from non-communicable chronic diseases has surpassed that of all chronic diseases like malaria. So as hard as it is to witness this, understanding the system shifts that are occurring, the from and to, offers us contrast to help us discern paths to tremendous possibility. The bridge between chronic inflammation as the root cause of illness and the state of integrity and diversity of our soil, our terrain, the environment in which we live and grow food, that is becoming richly and evident. Nature is giving us a barely yet understood glimpse into the systems of incredible diversity and inherent cooperation in the world around us, in living soil, in healthy human guts, in the biomes, not just in our guts, around our eyes, our noses, our hearts, in eco-diverse systems management for the land, cooperative models that honor diversity, an agreement working together in communities living on Earth. All this can bring amazing and unexpected benefit and seeming synchronicities, but it's actually a technology for synchronicity that brings benefits and rapid healing to many systems, many diseases that we have in body, mind, and even soul systems. And we never dreamed that so much of this is linked to the very ground on which we stand. So it's clear to us at Planetary CARE and how we've come together and as we continue to evolve that it's time for us to be bridges to networks that support hardworking, often isolated local efforts that are desiring change and working from within. But it's the siloing that is the challenge. Planetary CARE was designed with that end in mind. We're holding the space to spark and sustain a next level of impact from diverse and committed individuals, organizations, and community through helping them access incredible innovation. I mean, everything that we need is probably more and then some has already been looked at, invented, and are part of working systems. So there's incredible innovation. There's heart-centered human technologies, leadership developments, and helping be a direct bridge to resources with practical tools to break through barriers to one of the most valuable resources we have on this earth we call home, the living soil and the communities that would foster it. So one example I wanted to bring forward with a call out to the Soil and Climate Alliance working goal. As a bridging organization, we have adopted deeply their working goal. The Soil and Climate Alliance working goal is to advance a resilient and inclusive agriculture system that regenerates soil, sequesters carbon, revitalizes farm and rural economics while improving water quality, biodiversity, food security, and nutrition. And so there's their North Star, and we're looking at the same North Star, and there's all these networks working on this. They're emerging all over the world, values-based, member-owned, where we are a distributed, autonomous, starfish-type enterprise structure, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. For us now, it's continued to refine and define as we're launching initiatives in 3 areas where we've commonly decided we can have the most impact. So before we describe those 3 enterprises, it's best to just dive a little bit deeper into the platform from which they spring. So what is Planetary CARE? We're a complex, novel enterprise dedicated to bridging emergent and proven ecosystem technologies around healthy soil and healthy communities, so much so that adoption rapidly increases and the current system becomes obsolete. We know that that's critical. You know, it's said a society grows great when they plant trees under whose shade they shall never sit. This is kind of the soul of an audacious purpose. So welcome to our audacious purpose. Resilience through regeneration for everyone, everywhere, no exceptions. We are designed to be, we've called ourselves a backbone organization, but we're realizing backbones don't have a lot of meat and skin and all the stuff that you need on them. We're really more of a bridge. As a bridge organization, we're designed to listen and understand the ground, the space that we're spanning, to understand what we're coming from and where we're going to bring together the diversity of stakeholders that's necessary to achieve a common purpose. So our compass point, resilience through regeneration. But by building a global collaborative commons, I love that term, a global collaborative commons, one bioregion, one place at a time, around living soil and the healthy food systems that naturally emerge from that endeavor. A healthy commons, like a healthy ecosystem, is naturally resilient. I mean, it's no surprise that studies show small, diverse stakeholder communities practicing regenerative type methods and mutually cooperating through their governance systems bounce back after adverse climate conditions like no other, much quicker than on large government or private businesses. It's no accident. We know inside that this is true. So when purpose arises around individual and commonly held values, integrity results, and that integrity holds resilience. We work with guidance from universal values of dignity, equity, compassion, and humility. All of our decisions are to point back and to be aligned with those values. And that's a different way of doing things from many other ways that organizations on the planet right now, but no surprise to groups like this. We're a multi-stakeholder cooperative, member-owned, and member governed is a legal blend between a low profit LLC and a nonprofit, an L3C social purpose entity. This legal structure has afforded us so many benefits, like leveraging the support of thousands of committed volunteers without whom we could not have developed the diverse aspects as a small group. The diversity of Planetary CARE is astonishing. Our Constitution itself embraces decentralized organizational structure and sociocratic principles, and that's our tool for governance. It's novel. And in this steady evolution, the elements that form a syntropic enterprise, one which leads to greater coherence over time, become apparent. Unlike much of what's going on in the world right now is entropic systems, those who are leading to disorder and chaos are showing themselves. So it's really a fascinating place to be. Always pointing towards our compass point of resilience through regeneration, we design backward from impact. What is the impact that we are seeking to have, and holding that larger purpose in clear focus? So living soil in 12% of farmland by 2035. And living soil is defined by more than 3% organic matter in the soil. Why 12%? Because it's been bandied about, but it's been identified as a tipping point that'll cause a dramatic shift to a regenerative mindset. And once that happens, it's like dominoes falling. Out of the 186 discrete land-based bioregions of the world, we aim to support 12% to become healthy and thriving. That's 22 bioregions, primarily in the Americas and Africa. Dignity and equity for all is measured by quality of life indicators versus GDP and other methods. We start to really look through the values of our, or through the eyes, the perspective, the lens of our values. And that's all of those pieces come together for a thriving syntropic enterprise type model, one designed to get away and become bigger than us, and over time become the tree under whose shade we will never sit, but the 7th generation will benefit. So designing backwards from impact enables us to give traction to creating new paradigms without losing the energy of trying to fix the old ones, which is what's going on in so many circles today. Coming from an extractive yield thinking to cultivating diverse, dynamic, resilient living soil systems. From reliance on long national or global food chains to bioregional, thriving, resilient, healthy communities consuming locally grown food. From a mechanistic, everything is separate view to a systems life of view and a celebration of interconnection and diversity. From the belief that conventional methods are economically advantageous and the only ones we have, to deep knowledge, ancient knowledge of social and environmental benefit and economic viability of regenerative practices. From farmers feeling isolated when choosing to move to regenerative soil building practices, as is currently happening now, to feeling the deep cultural and social acceptance in their own circles, their own communities, to becoming our soil heroes. That's what we see as possible. So there's time for one more burning question. If anyone has for any burning questions before we have Juan describe his vision for that part of planetary care that brings resources to be accessible to the people that we work with. Are there any questions out there? Anything in the chat?
I have a quick burning request from Marianne. Check your chat.
Okay, sorry, thank you. Trying to manage all the
No
slides.
problem.
Oh, you were Peace Corps as well, Stephen, in Brazil. That's fabulous. And that same tribal experience, it goes deep in the bones. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, whenever Peace Corps volunteers get together, we are able to talk to each other at a very deep tribal level.
It's so interesting how we were drawn into that space. I mean, I had no idea that that would happen to me, but I see it, and I'm sure you as well. It just keeps iterating through life in interesting ways.
Oh, it iterated through my entire life and changed me completely. And everything you said rings so true about village life and people giving you the last food they have, and you just feel like you almost can't eat it because you know what it means to them, and yet they love you, and they would be ashamed if you didn't take it. It just is so many dilemmas at so many levels.
Oh my gosh. And you know, just a funny little story, the first bowl of living termites, where I opened the bowl and here are these crawling termites, and I thought to myself, I can't do this. And then you realize just what you said, there is no way I'm not going to do this. And having that first taste and then realizing, oh my God, this is delicious.
I need to talk to you separately, but I think we have some things to talk about.
That'd be great. Thank you. Yes, thank you so much. Beautiful. Anything else I'm missing? Any burning question? It's my deep delight to introduce you to yet another person who has been so immersed in an indigenous culture. Juan Whiting, who is the leader, the operational leader of our grant agency, is a fourth generation Texas A&M person with a master's in international agriculture development and a plant and breeding and genetics PhD fellow for the Conflict and Development Center. But Juan spent 8 years also in East Africa, supporting farmers building sustainable systems, seed systems in Rwanda, which was not an easy place to be. And after 3 years seeing the core issues his farmers faced and shifting to sustainable practices, he co-founded Pride Farms. I'll let him take that and talk to you, but what he realized is that it's the bridge, that gap between those who would do such good if they only had access to resources and the resources. So it's a great pleasure and honor to be working with Juan. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Juan.
You know, it is really bizarre that, you know, Marianne and Melanie, we just have very similar kind of life origin stories. My background, I'm a fourth generation farmer and rancher, originally from here in Utah. I'm finally back in Utah. But growing up, I was doing just the standard conventional farming and grew up doing row crops and have, you know, started driving tractors when I was 12 and fell in love with it. And I was told to go get an education so you don't have to live this life. And so my education kind of led to, yeah, just more farming. And I have loved it my whole life. And when I originally went out to Kenya for 2 years as a missionary, learned Swahili and Kikamba, and was really deeply impacted while I was out there because I was there during the election violence of 2008 and 2009 and saw the importance that food had in preventing conflict, but also potentially creating conflict. The lack of food, the challenges that people face when they have no options as families, especially providers. And so it had a huge impact on me while I was there as a missionary. And I was in a village where there was very little impact. And I ended up staying there for a long time. One month after another, I had people come and then go, and they would leave me there because I was a farmer and they just saw that this is kind of where you belong in rural areas. But I saw that there was a much more resilient and deep rooted foundation that these communities had. And I think that we've all kind of hit on this a little bit, but while I was able to see this, I came back to the US and decided that I wanted to focus my efforts on preventing conflict through producing food. And that led me to eventually going to Texas A&M, studying international ag development, and eventually going and working for the Howard Buffett Foundation. But all throughout that, I found that grant writing was where I was kind of destined to go. I loved writing. I loved telling people stories and really developing projects that could get funded and ultimately help people get the projects off the ground, because there was always a lot of talk when you're out in developing countries, and oftentimes there's very little action, especially when little sustainable action. And so while I was out there with the Howard Buffett Foundation, became something I was very passionate about, but we were pushing for a brown revolution. There was so much focus on the green revolution, and it had taken its toll on the environment, monocropping and the push for fertilizer had done a lot of damage, which in where I had grown up, I had seen the same thing. A lot of plowing, a lot of the damages, not only to the ecosystem, but to the farmers themselves. I watched as a lot of the neighbors that I grew up with, a lot of the mentors, the farmer mentors that I had grown close to, including my father, started to have diseases that were not common outside of the rural areas. A lot of cancers and things. And I started to see that this wasn't something that I was very passionate about. I mean, I was finding that while the organic movement was relatively new to me, I was interested in finding a way to make it work. And I was seeing a lot of indigenous farmers making it work and actually, achieving yields that were about the same. And especially when it came to the profitability and the margins. So I eventually left the Howard Buffett Foundation, started my own farm management company with the idea that I was going to push for regenerative and organic solutions and also support smallholder farmers to get there. And so this has been a passion of mine for years. After 6 years in Rwanda and in Congo, kind of supporting smallholder farmers in growing in a much more sustainable way and also reaching some of those higher end markets, I realized that one of the key issues that we have to address is that we have to help our farmers find, if we're transitioning, and this was at the core for me, is that I can want to transition as a farmer. I can want to transition to regenerative models, to more organic practices. But if it is not economically viable, and if there isn't some catalyst to help me get there, it's not going to happen. And that was something that was very critical for me to see, and helped me realize that grant writing is not just important for me, but as I came back to the U.S., it was something that was going to be crucial for the farmers here in the future. And the timing of all this, if we can go back to that slide, I don't know if let's see, where is it?
This one?
Nope, just a couple back. Sorry.
This one?
One more. There we go. Right. So this is where right now what we're seeing, right? There is over $5 trillion that's going into the global agribusiness industry is valued at. Of that 5 trillion, only 7.8 billion is going to regenerative right now. And that is less than 1%. There's a huge opportunity, especially right now where there's in large amounts of funding being pushed at creating solutions. In one of our industries that has been oftentimes, in a very negative way, put in a very negative light, to it's being seen now as a solution for some of the climate crisis that we're dealing with now. So what we're expecting is in the next 10 years, or even 7 years, that we'll have an additional 26% of farmers adopting regenerative practices, which is super exciting. But on my level, being a farmer myself and having gone through the process, getting your farm off drugs is not an easy step to take. And it does take some support. And this is where, I talk to farmers a lot, but when we're talking, we're discussing, well, I don't need a handout. I don't need these things. We have to look at this together as a community. And Melanie said it best. We are all in this together, all a community. And when we find that one farm, when we're able to transition one farm, that affects collectively the community that they're living in, but also all the people that are participating in the value chain. And so that's really why we value these farms, and why they should see grants not as a handout, but as something that's necessary for the community, necessary for our nation and for our world as we transition to more sustainable practices. So we can go to the next slide. So I've kind of given you a little bit of my background, my origin story. We've put together a team, a grant agency, and the idea, the whole goal is for us to quickly support these farmers, these ranchers, and these agricultural organizations that are seeking to promote these changes and these transitions, because they're not easy, and there's going to be a lot of challenges along the way, and it really does take significant stakeholder engagement to make what the changes that we're hoping to create happen. And so yeah, and we probably don't have time to introduce all of our team, but there's Heidi, Jorge, Madison, and Mahatma. All of them are experts in agriculture before they became grant writers, and so they've all had experience working with farmers. And this is really where we differentiate as a grant agency, is that we are able to understand on a ground level how the operation's going and how we can tie that into grant funding and help support farmers and get down on their level and say, hey, this is important, and we can make this happen. We understand where you're at and the technologies that you need to use to become more efficient, because it's all in their operation and their the business that they're running is first and foremost when we're building out these grants. Okay, we can go to the next slide here. So just as I was saying, that it really, for us to achieve some of the funding that these farmers need, we really have to build out solid stakeholder engagement. And it's important for us, and just to give a little bit of background on the team, at this stage, myself and some of the others, we've won up to $27 million in grant funding, and much of that experience has been in federal grants, state grants, foundation grants, and this is all in the agricultural and the environmental space that we're working in, and that gives us a lot more, when we're going in and talking to these farmers, we have a lot more perspective to give them when we come with the grant writing lens, and then they give us, like, this is what we need, this is our operation. So we'll go to kind of the next, how we actually get this started. So this is really the kind of the 4 phases of grant funding that we're looking at. And we really start, when we work with a farmer, we start with a funding strategy. And what that entails is us figuring out what is the scope of your project? What do you want to accomplish? What are your goals? What are your desires? And then figuring out which grants are going to be the best fit, right? And we really start with this area, because a lot of farmers start on the other end, where they're like, they'll hear about a grant and they'll say, oh, I should just apply for that. We want to find the right grant, the ones that are unique and have the best fit, and not just that, but are the most winnable grants that we can apply for, right? This makes it, when we do apply for it, a much more worthwhile investment for the farmers. So starting with that, we put together a list of either 10 to 20 different grants that are a perfect fit for them. And then going into it, we start to develop dive deeper into the actual project development and find ways to connect with partners, because grant funding is all about partners. If we can get good engagement, and this is really what Planetary CARE is all about, is connecting communities, connecting people and partners. And in that, we can create significant impact. One farmer can't do a lot, but 100 farmers in a community can completely change that region. And so going into it, we find that we identified that we've already identified the grants. Then we go into a funding strategy where we say, here's the work plan. This is the year, what it's going to look like. These are the grants we want to go for, and this is why, right? We might have one grant that we write up that's specifically for, dealing with the watershed issues on the ranch. And that might be able to be used again repurposed for other grant opportunities as well, because we've gone through and we've done the work to see these are all the wetland restoration grants out there, so that one grant that's written is worth 3 grants. So these are just, you know, some of just an example of a couple of tricks that we use. But then once we go into the implementation of the funding strategy, now we're actually starting to build the grants. And that's really that's kind of the heavy lifting. Once we start to win grants, we're there to negotiate, to help with the contracting, the reporting, all the stuff that the farmers are like, I don't want to touch this because it just takes too much time and they've got to be out in the fields. So that's our goal, is to, you know, be able to take over all that heavy lifting and allow the farmers to focus on what they do best. All right, next slide.
Well, I think we're going to stop now before Forrest takes over. I see if there are a few burning questions.
Well, and I can help a little bit because I've been reading the questions. Right now, the primary focus is for funding in the United States and North America. We do plan to be able to expand it out to, as you're asking, Stephen, to Ecuador, or another question for Mexico, but we're not quite there yet. We're also turning around and looking at probably 24 months out, probably having an AI-driven methodology that turns around and is monitoring all the grants and able to turn around and drop the costs even lower for grant creation by using what's coming in artificial intelligence and all the rest of it. So that's in our kind of private roadmap right now.
Yeah, and to go off that, so this is really where the benefit of doing a funding strategy is that we become aggressive about our transition, and we're committed. So when that happens and we're able to team up with a farm, then we can do kind of a retainer model where we do a very discounted price of, you know, per grant. Rather than doing per grant, we do it, you know, throughout the year and say, hey, we're going to apply for 10 to 12 grants. These are the grants we want to go for. But because we're working together, it's getting smoother, more organized, and we're in sync, and we're able to apply much more efficiently, which enables us to, you know, do things at a much lower rate. And that's really the goal, is to make it efficient, just not only for us, but also for the farmers.
Great. Thank you so much, Juan, and really appreciate it. And as everybody can see, really, I'm feeling so honored by the folks and the people and everybody that's come together to support the Planetary CARE vision. I'm going to start for a moment and kind of do some time shifting. So this image is really about what happened for me in 2006 when I landed on a dairy doing consulting. And they had been doing this very simple thing of injecting beneficial microbes or probiotics into the water supply of these commercial dairy, 400 cows, at the pump house all the time for 4 years by the time I got there. I stood on the berm of a multi-million-gallon waste pond bigger than a football field. Normally, you'd want to be standing miles away from this thing, and it smelled musty. The farmer then turns around and tells us, oh, by the way, I haven't using fertilizer in the last 2 years. Though I'm standing up there and as far as I could see, I can see corn 7 and 8 feet tall, except his place. There it's 13.5 feet tall. Then he says, oh, by the way, I'd be more than happy to spray pesticides, but you know what? We just don't get enough pests to justify spending the money. And those people that are lactose intolerant, they drink our milk with no issues. So this is what really started for me a very deep dive. Next slide. But before I go into that deep dive, one of the things that I only remembered just a few years ago was that in 1994, I turned around and wrote a white paper right at the beginning of the internet, envisioning how a value system community could come together and why that was so incredibly important. We'll go to the next slide. And so really the progress here has really begun for Planetary CARE in 2015 when I was introduced to Susan. It was quite wonderful because in terms of working with her, she challenged me to come up with an audacious mission in terms of moving forward. And so we went back and forth by email a little bit, and I ended up with facilitating thriving and measurable microbial solutions industries across the planet. I figured that was audacious enough since there doesn't really exist any yet today. I turned around and had really got into the Kin's Primer, and I had read her Trojan Horse of Love book. That ended up leading to taking a one-year training with Elisa as the leader and the founding of the Carbon Farming Innovation Network, which then ended up combining with the Regeneration Supply Working Group to become the Soil Climate Alliance now. So it's just so important to me that we really recognize that all of us are standing on the incredible work that's been done over decades by so many people. We'll go to the next. Thank you so much, Susan and Lisa. So I'll take a couple moments here and I'll talk about our innovation network. And basically through this journey, really what a lot of the focus has been since about 2015 has been building social capital. We've been building this really with practically no funding and just a vision of how to put this together. And so right now, there are, as Melanie was mentioning, and Marianne, just this incredible number of both technology as well as physical inputs, microbials, and all types of other things that have really having a tremendous benefit for accelerating regenerative agriculture. But even if these companies are 20, 30, $50 million in annual sales going out there, that's nothing in a $5 trillion industry, and the amount of energy to be able to get this knowledge spread. Go to the next. This is just a few of the different collaborators that we've really developed tight relationships with over the years. As you can see, we really focus on the entire food supply chain. So it doesn't matter whether it is economics, as in the case of AutoCase, where it's giving triple bottom line analysis of what's the full impact on this, or whether it is Propagate Ventures with a new platform of how to do ecology and what's the expenses with it, or it's Blend Hub, which is not yet in the United States, but has 9 plants around the world, having figured out how to put an entire food manufacturing plant inside of a shipping container. All of these kinds of systems and many, many more are really needed to accelerate regenerative agriculture. We'll go next. And one in particular that I want to highlight, and thank you, Amanda, in terms of being here and all the support that you're providing, that we're a reseller for. This is really quite extraordinary. Over a course of over 20 years, an incredible doctor out of Italy has been able to figure out how to basically take and create the frequencies that can be put into water that turn around and are transmitted to the plants and basically cause the plant to start operating back into its optimal state. It is now spread, I spoke to her recently, to over 49 countries with representatives. And of course, this is quite a early adoption type of a methodology that really needs to get out and has extraordinary benefit. It just has to touch metal and it turns around and goes around the irrigation pipes, and then that carries the water to where it needs to be. And they are incredibly creative at figuring out, even if there isn't an irrigation system, you can turn around in lots of different methods so that it can work for smallholder farmers and everybody at any scale. We'll go next. And so basically our method that we're developing for the Innovation Agency is recognizing that all agriculture is local. And we really need to build the bioregional food supply chains. And so the way that we will do this is by partnering with local organizations, Friends of Family Farmers, the food hubs, other types of different organizations. They end up earning a small commission in terms of connecting and basically vetting, feeling comfortable with what it is that we're offering. And then we take on the heavy lifting of educating their members, providing the products, and then doing the customer service to make sure everything is working well. And so at this point, I think I'll be passing back to Melanie and Marianne, and I'm happy to pause if there's any burning questions. And back to you.
Yeah, I think maybe we'll just wait until the end. We're almost at the end, and we can just open up for dialogue. So let's just move on. So why SoFIA? And I'll explain in a second. So as we mentioned, Planetary CARE is an intermediary, empowering communities to move from fractured relationships to relationship building and collaboration between regional food system leaders that are committed to soil first solutions. So we're going to launch the Soil First Industry Association, short is SoFIA. And we're doing this to foster a space for collaboration. And we want to build unique bioregional foods value systems and solutions with the local community. So SoFIA will be the first association network that is dedicated to the acceleration of soil first practices across this particular industry. So it's designed with a syntropic whole system response in mind. So between the three enterprises that we are launching, the SoFIA is going to be at the heart of our work and sustain it long term. We're also going to create a global SoFIA that's going to support the many bioregional SoFIAs that's going to be launched across the globe. And I'll pass it over to you, Melanie. So you're on mute. Or yes.
There, did that work?
Yes, that worked.
So how are we gonna seed these bioregional food systems? So like planting seed, we know that growth has to occur from the inside out within an environment conducive to growth in soil that's ready for that kind of growth. So preparing the soil, we follow a synergistic operational strategy. We want to support the risk takers, the transformational leaders that already exist within communities in the efforts and the work that they're currently doing and identifying the gaps. Identifying the gaps and creating structural organizations for change, that's like the fertilizer. And for us, one of our rich, juicy nuggets is developing transformational leadership for results, which enables fostering an environment for that kind of leadership to take root in. So we've developed a deeply respectful and caring, loving, heart-centered relationship with a training program that has been tried and true in over 60 countries of the world through our friend Monica Sharma. Monica was an epidemiologist at the UN, and she worked globally with a set of tools that she developed over 22 years to create a program called Radical Transformational Leadership. So this framework we're actually currently involved with in Planetary CARE right now. There's a group of us going through the 4-month training. It is a set of tools that are done in a very specific systems mindset with integrity through the system that creates a cohort of people that are looking at how to address elements of system shift and solving wicked problems, which Monica did, again, all over the world, 60 countries. And she was the one they would put in places where there was, female genital mutilation and child sex trafficking and HIV, AIDS, and homophobia in Arabic countries. And she would bring priests and mullahs and prostitutes, the whole children trafficked, all to the table together. So think through a system of how you affect change that actually creates new systems rather than trying to change old ones. And she gained traction. So those programs are still going on. They're really tried and true. So our offering into local bioregional communities will be through the eyes of what's already occurring. Where are the gaps? How can we span the gap that's needed to span to get from where we're at to where we're going? And then that cohort, likely around 100 handpicked leaders from enterprises that represent all the players in a particular biofood region, or food bioregion, those will be the founding members of bioregional SoFIAs, there to support each other and part of a larger network, like a forest, a tree in a forest, of a larger industry association. So in that case, who is our audience? Well, our audience is all the players involved in regional food systems, and then they are in a network of a much larger field that's intended to scale and really move regenerative agriculture significantly, again, towards that 12% tipping point. So as a bridge organization, we're dedicated to span that gap. And the key words are collaborative innovation network, which we've talked about, and creating a marketplace dedicated to the issues that present uniquely and commonly in any bioregion. Equipping those people with tools and experiences so that they become powerfully and then passionately engaged in the shift back to a healthy soil-first food system, which is what we used to have before we mucked it up. So weaving universal values of dignity, equity, compassion, and humility into the very fabric of all those enterprises is critical for us, for our compass point, and we believe will be the impact we want to see for all sentient beings. So with that, I'm going to invite Marianne to look into the fabric of the SoFIAs and to understand how they support local change. Marianne?
Thanks, Melanie. So the regional SoFIAs they'll also provide the expected value propositions that industry associations typically have. So Planetary CARE will be first to market in offering an industry association for soil-first organizations. So these SoFIAs will be independent nonprofits staffed by locals. They will offer location-specific, in-person, and virtual conferences, networking events, workshops, training, education, etc. And of course, the global SoFIA will offer the same from a global perspective. So Planetary CARE is going to hire an association management company, an AMC, because they're going to set up and grow the SoFIAs across the globe. This is what they do for a living. They will take care of the logistics and the legal aspects of setting up an association in a new bioregion or country. The AMC will also manage the day-to-day operations. So Planetary CARE will be responsible for the branding, the marketing, designing the topics to educate and promote, and we're going to provide the world-class speakers that, basically leveraging the incredible social capital we've built already. So, as we've highlighted, the systems today have created complex problems requiring novel solutions. So in the wise words of Richard Hames, when community engagement drives social transformation, when matriarchal law and indigenous wisdom achieve parity with patriarchy, when humans accept being part of nature and treat each other and other species with reverence, then we'll be witness to a new consciousness and a more viable human civilization. So Planetary CARE has set her compass point to supporting the wisdom of the collective for social and local solutions. And the last one, so to launch the SoFIAs, the Innovation Agency and the Grant Agency, we are actually raising $1 million right now. We are now at the start of our fundraise. And from our stand of dignity, equity, compassion, and humility, we chose a path of revenue royalty-based financing as an alternative to the traditional debt or equity financing. And we've created a very generous offer for investors. We are raising 2 rounds. The first is $120,000, which will mainly be used to pay marketing firms to prepare us for the crowdfunding campaign, where we plan to raise the last bit of the $1 million. So the initial investors of the $120,000 will be particularly generously awarded. So if you're interested in learning more, we'd love to set up a call with you to dive into the 65-page detailed financial model that we've developed for these 3 enterprises and explain the investor benefits we're offering. If you can refer 2 or 3 friends or family members who may be interested in learning more about Planetary CARE or what we have to offer, we would love to chat with them. And so any wisdom you can share on how we can transform agriculture to obsolete the current system will be an absolute gift to all sentient beings. So let's open it up We are very excited to open up the dialogue for collective wisdom.
Thank you very much. What a fantastic presentation. So for those of you who are not familiar with how to raise your hand, let's see, I'm going to unspotlight Marianne. There is in the reactions button down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a button that says raise hand. So we've got about 15 or so minutes for Q&A. I think many of us are so in awe. What a phenomenal presentation, and the scope of what you are doing is absolutely stunning. So gosh, really amazing.
Thank
Stephen.
you, Lauren.
Wow, geez, I am just so impressed with the work that you're doing, and I'm so in love with all you guys, and you're just making me feel so inspired with everything. And we just came from meeting Marianne in person in Costa Rica, so just one more high that we're all in, and hi to you, Marianne.
Hi.
Yeah. So this is a very simple question. Forrest, you said that I think you're somewhere in Oregon where we are, and I'd love to come out and visit you if that's possible.
Yeah, actually, I just recently moved from Portland to Colorado Springs. So that's where I'm based right now. However, as a result of some new relationships in Eastern Oregon, it looks like I'll be spending the month of April in
March.
Oregon. And so very possibly we could. I would love to get together again.
Oh, yeah. So when you're making those changes in plans, I will drive out to see you out there because you're on my list of people to see in person, and I want to do that. So we'll do that offline by email.
Sounds great, Stephen.
Great, thank you. And Walter, you've got your hand up. Walter Moore, one of our board members in Ecuador.
Hi, Forrest. Long time no see. I really enjoyed this presentation. I had a question. Here in Vilcabamba, we're in the southern part of Ecuador. We're in the process of creating a circular economy, and we're hoping that our watershed, so maybe 10,000 people, but we're surrounded by a couple of national parks, very beautiful area. So we're creating this circular economy with seeds and time bank and a few other ideas, but I realized a few days ago that we don't have a really good plan to become sovereign in our food production. I have a good connection to a university here that might be interested in helping, but when I was listening to the your program just now, I was thinking maybe we could get help because it's to be able to grow all our own food in this area. It's going to be a very big project, and we do have some good growing valleys. We could, if we really plan this out right, we could probably grow most of the food for the residents in this valley. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts.
Sounds great, Walter, and let's as a deeper dive. So let's definitely connect directly in terms of that. But I have a few different ideas, and I would love to support you and Susan. And we're hopefully actually I'm planning to be there in June as part of the gathering. So we can dive in deeper then as well.
Yeah, fantastic.
Well, with that cue, I'm going to do a quick screen share because I do want to make sure that we announce what's coming up. So couple quick announcements before we go to more questions. I want to invite everyone to create their own profile and connect with us offline in our online community. So we have these networking events. There's been so much wonderful dialogue in the chat. I hear so many of you are doing phenomenal things. Kinship Earth decided to partner with the Open Future Coalition to create an online community on the Open Impact Network. The key word there is open. They use open architecture. So it is still a beta community, but just go to kinshipearth.org. And then when you fill out your, when you submit your name and email address to get our updates, you will be taken automatically to this page, and it'll say either sign in or sign up. You can click the sign up button and create a profile, and then you'll be connected with our community and then also the wider community of regenerative projects and organizations and people. And then this video will be uploaded to our video library once I get it edited, so in a couple of days. And then we've got some upcoming events, but what was just referenced, Forrest referenced, Finca Sagrada. So Walter and Susan Davis Mora own a beautiful 277-hectare farm and regenerative biodynamic farm outside of Vilcabamba, Ecuador. And we are in the early planning stages for our major convening this year. And we're going to be bringing together leaders in regeneration for a ceremony with the Kogi Mamos of Northern Colombia will be there, and to collaborate on how we can help Walter and Susan transition this piece of property from private ownership to a community-supported sacred site so that it can be member-owned, a member-owned cooperative, and that we can carry on their vision and their legacy and work in harmony with the land. So please visit the website at kinshipearth.org, look at the schedule page, you'll see the event. We have a form right there where you can submit your interest level, and then we will keep you posted on the upcoming plans for that. So I'm going to stop share and open it back up for questions. Thank you. All right, I see Hank Patton has his hand up. Welcome, Hank. You feel free to unmute yourself.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm delightful to see the progress, Forrest and Melanie. Deeply impressive, and I love the clear emphasis upon the fact that agriculture is local. Of course, the model that you're building, agriculture, is also intergenerational, meaning you are partnering with the future in the most beautiful and powerful way. Something that really lifts my heart. And by the way, the health and well-being of the children growing in the landscapes that you're improving. So here's a great salutation to the bunch of you for that. It's fabulous to see the team growing. I think your Marianne is a perfect choice in the leadership role. I think Juan's work is extremely interesting. It looks like you're putting a fabulous team together, Juan. Congratulations on that. I'd like to encourage you to use a word that combines local and intergenerational in a fun way. Instead of locality, it's glocality. It's local service and stewardship in all the ecosystems of their many diverse types, but built upon living soil and abundance and generosity, which is, of course, Mother Nature's amazing gift to us all and the future. What glocality does is it allows you to remember that when you're turning the compost, you're turning the global compost and the intergenerational compost. And all by itself, the one act will put earthworms in your garden, and the earthworms will feed your children in a wonderful way. But it also, if you aggregate that shovel full of compost in a planetary scale and an intergenerational time frame, undiscounted, because it's ridiculous to discount life on the only known living planet. What a foolish thing to discount. Suddenly, if the metrics are good, you're in a position now to aggregate, bundle, and securitize those outcomes in secondary markets, meaning in addition to the sweet corn and the spinach, you also are creating carbon values, biodiversity values, habitat and corridor values, obviously huge climate values, health and wellness outcomes, and these can be measured, these can be bundled, these can be sold. And the income from that can be provided to the many beautiful young farmers that you are presently and increasingly dedicated to supporting. So I don't want to take any more of your time, but I think if future generations could have a window here, you'd see a lot of applause, a lot of waving hands, because you're doing fabulous work, and more power to you. As we know, the global climate redevelopment world is asking for and needs something between 9 and 15 trillion to do the energy transition. It sounds like a lot of money, and of course it's an incomprehensible amount of money, but it's available in the global finance community, and long-term financial instruments based upon good revenue models can open up access to that kind of capital to the good work that you're doing. So I'd love to pick up that conversation down the road. It also points at a problem that underlies all this, that if you own the wrong stuff, you've got a problem. Juan was describing that very beautifully, unhooking a farm from a model that's been based on the drug system is not easy to do, but it's possible. It's a long-term investment, and it requires a partnership with the future. I'll leave my comments there, but that's kudos to you all. Fabulous work.
Thank you, Hank. And it's just extraordinary in terms of both being able to visit and where he's located in the gorge, right on the Washington side there, and your work with intergenerational finance is so important to get out. And you're absolutely right. Marianne has been with me and us for 2.5 years now, and we really would not be here if it wasn't for the amazing work that she has also brought forward with this, and the entire team, but in particular, Marianne working full-time with me as well. So thank you.
Awesome. I see Stephen Carson has his hand up. Stephen, go ahead.
Hi guys, how's it going today? What an honor to be here. Wow, this is tremendous. And matter of fact, we should all actually take a screenshot of this, because I truly believe, you guys, that this is what it looks like to change the world. This is like, oftentimes we think that it's some big event that's coming on the horizon and we change some big thing, right? But this is what it looks like, right? And we're the ones that are doing it. And there's incredible rewards for that, even though it's so challenging, right? To get there. But this is a tremendous gift that we have, a tremendous time that we have available to us right now, because it's like, we've just gone through the dark ages in many ways, right? And yet what comes after the dark ages? It's the Renaissance, and we're the ones that are called to give birth to this Renaissance, right? And so what a tremendous thing that you guys have done so far. I can't even believe, like, I'm actually like, there's so many resources that you guys have spoken about, and I've got 100 acres. My wife and I have 100 acres of rainforest. It's this cloud forest, this magic place, and we're reforesting, we're doing permaculture, and it's just this radical thing to like, and building community and such. And so I'm deeply connected with what you're talking about. And I was just recently at the 500th ceremony out of 500 of the Quetzalcoatl, which is the Toltec Mayan understanding, and I was at the very last, the final one, the shifting the polarities. We're in a new time, you guys. We're bringing forth this new age, right? Through these things that we're all talking about here. And the rewards for them, wow, they're so tremendous. It's absolutely astounding, right? To be able to plant these seeds of love and hope and joy and peace and tranquility in the world as we're planting seeds to feed people too, right? At the same time, taking care of the foundational levels of our heart and our physical body so that we can eat, but then transferring into what says your heart. There's a saying that the Mayan, I live here in Mayan territory, the indigenous are all around me, and it's kushi avonton, and it's what says your heart. And so you get to the core of who you really are, instead of like, hey, bud, how's it going? And the guy's like dying inside, but he says, oh, I'm all right. No, it's like, what are we here for? What's our purpose? So to bring this forth, the laws of the universe are such that when we plant, we reap. Am I right? Like, that's just the way it works, right? And so we are the ones that have been called to like be the leaders in this coming age. So just a quick encouragement, guys, because I would love to have access to some of the resources you guys are talking about. Like, as you can imagine, trying to settle raw land on my own by myself, never being a rancher, never even stepped foot on a ranch until 2 years ago or 3 years. So anyways, but I'm here with you guys, and I'm so overjoyed to see that there's people too that are rocking it, around the world. What a blessing, and light and love to all you guys. Really, it means a lot just to be here for a minute.
Stephen, your enthusiasm is so contagious. And if you haven't already, please make sure you put your contact information in the chat so that we can stay in touch with you and continue to follow up. So I'm mindful of the time. We do our best to start and end our meetings on time. So before we close, I want to just invite the team at Planetary CARE to say any closing remarks. And then I'm also going to ask if Susan Davis-Mora wants to put a blessing into the room with her voice, since you were part of the inspiration for this gathering today.
We are here, keepers of the garden, we are here. When if not now, where if not here? Who if not you and me? We are here, we are here, keepers of the garden, we are here.
Oh, thank you, Susan. How
That was
wonderful is
beautiful.
that? And I want to just give a quick shout out to thank you, Cameron, for all the support and ongoing that you are, and Holly, who's also here as part of our team. And it really does take us all, and it's going to take many, many more. And as we're doing it, and Kinship Earth is such a critical component of it all.
Well, we are honored to connect the dots of these amazing light beings all over the world. We encourage all of you to, again, make sure to sign up for our email list to get invitations for our upcoming events. Stephen, before we close, as chairman of the board, you want to say anything on behalf of Kinship Earth?
No, I just want to again acknowledge that you're doing such a tremendous job for us here at Kinship Earth. We're so grateful that you're with us, Lauren, and you're even now in North Carolina doing a lot of on-the-ground work there. We're meeting in March, and you're still able to come here and coordinate everything from way out there in the East Coast. So thank you so much for all that you're doing. I know that Susan and Walter and I are tremendously grateful for your contributions. And I can't say enough, Lauren. So, and thanks everybody here for all your hard work, walking your soul's path, as Susan calls it, walking your life destiny path, and having the courage to do that. It's amazing. It's hard to have the courage to do it, but when you do it, the reward is so high. So love you guys. Blessings.
Feel free to unmute yourselves, say bye-bye, and please connect
Bye,
with
everyone.
us.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
See you guys.
God bless.
Many
God
blessings.
bless.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey, Joshua, so wonderful to see you. He is doing such amazing work down in South Africa, building regenerative villages.
Thanks, Forrest. I think it's the relationship we have is very, very helpful, and thanks for helping us create a better world. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Good night.
Thank you for joining us for today's Kinship Earth Connections event. We encourage you to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. To learn more and get involved, please visit us at kinshipearth.org.